Number 5 on this list is the Hay Adams Hotel. This hotel is located in Washington, D.C. and has quite the history to it. USA Today writes, quite possibly the most famous hotel in the capital, the Hay Adams has hosted many a politician, including the Obamas before inauguration. In 1884, best friends John Hay, Abraham Lincoln's private secretary and later a Secretary of State, and Henry Adams, the author and descendant of John Quincy, built their homes on the plot of land where the hotel now sits. In 1927, 9 years after Adams' death, the houses were razed and replaced by the hotel that stands today. Adams' wife Marion Hooper Adams killed herself on the site in 1885 and her spirit reportedly haunts the hotel. Guests and staff say they can hear a woman crying softly, disembodied voices, and doors opening and closing on their own. What is it about hotels and people taking their own lives? It feels like so many hotels are haunted because someone left the world far too early, and usually it was their decision to do so. Marion Hooper Adams is no exception, and she has made this hotel a very inhospitable place to stay. Sometimes you hear the faint cries of a creature or spirit and they go away, but apparently her spirit absolutely wails. All the time there are screams and crying heard. In fact, it's so repetitive that it gets less scary and more of an annoyance than anything else. People literally just can't sleep at night because they're constantly listening to her crying over how her life ended. It's also a nuisance when they find things missing all the time. Marion likes to move things and steal items. Oftentimes, the valuables of these people are gone if they leave the hotel for an extended period of time and then come back. Now, maybe this part of the legend is actually just one of the hotel workers stealing stuff and blaming it on her, but either way, things will go missing if you stay here. It's overall just a horrible experience being at this hotel for an extended period of time, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Number 4 on this list is Hotel Provincial. Located in New Orleans, this hotel is teeming with paranormal energy. USA Today says the 2-story Hotel Provincial with 94 rooms in the historic French Quarter is a retreat into old New Orleans. Like many New Orleans properties, it also claims to be a popular paranormal activity hub. Like other area hotels, the property acted as a medical facility for wounded Confederate soldiers and is said to still possess their spirits. From distressed soldiers and operating doctors to pools of blood, guests have reported it all. If actually staying at the property seems too spooky, it's also a stop on many walking ghost tours of the city as well. Pools of blood, guys. Literal pools of blood. Just imagine walking into your hotel room after a long day of doing stuff, getting into your PJs, moving the comforter over to your bed to slip in, and then seeing a bunch of blood just ooze out. This has actually happened to people before. That would absolutely scar me for life if something like that ever went down. Not to mention people actually getting physically scarred when they come here. People have reported getting attacked by unknown paranormal entities while staying here, waking up to a spirit completely ravaging them and having no idea how or why it's happening. This is not the type of hotel that you want to stay at, and you will literally risk your safety if you do. Number 3 on this list is the Pfister Hotel. This one has been around for a while and has got a lot of people scared who've stayed here. Travel and Leisure says the historic Pfister Hotel opened in Milwaukee in 1893 with elegant interiors and advanced technology for the times, including electricity, individual thermostat controls, and fireproofing, making it one of the most sought-after accommodations in the city. The hotel is supposedly home to a number of spooky sightings. In fact, several MLB players have reported their own personal ghost experiences in the hotel, and some are even too scared to stay there again. So guys, I actually run a podcast all about the MLB. Because I run this podcast, I'm pretty knowledgeable about the MLB. I have literally heard of this hotel before even doing research on this video. Players will flat out refuse to play here now because they get way too scared and can't get any sleep when they're there. Then obviously when they play their game the next day, they suck because they just spent the entire night basically fending for their lives in this haunted hotel. It's really too bad that it has to be this way because this is apparently one of the nicer hotels in Milwaukee. It's definitely one of the oldest, and back then it was the best place to stay if you wanted a luxurious night. Hopefully the ghosts that reside here eventually leave and we can all enjoy it once again without getting completely haunted. Number 2 on this list is the Emily Morgan Hotel. The Emily Morgan Hotel is located in Texas and is probably the most haunted in that entire state. It wasn't always the lovely and renovated hotel that it is today. Prior to this being a beautiful place to stay, this was actually a hospital and a place for doctors to stay. Obviously, during that period, it saw a lot of illness and death, and that has tainted the space. But believe it or not though, this isn't the only set of tragedies that this location has seen. Before it was a hospital, before it was anything at all, on this very site where the hotel currently sits, was the Battle of the Alamo. The Battle of the Alamo was one of the most critical battles in the Texas Revolution. The battle lasted for 13 brutal days in 1836. It was between the Mexican soldiers and the Texan soldiers. The Mexican soldiers won out and killed every single one of the Texan soldiers who were there defending their fort. This battle is one of the most famous in American history for how horrible and brutal it was. It's no wonder that the land here is haunted and will infect basically anything that's built here. It also doesn't help when the hotel used to be a hospital which saw its fair share of horrible things too. Nowadays, this hotel has a whole cast of paranormal characters. Soldiers from back in the day have been spotted roaming around the halls, and patients and doctors as well. There have even been a few occasions where people have reported having visions of being on the battlefield as if they were transported there. Definitely not the spot to be staying on your vacay to Texas. And finally, number 1 on this list is La Fonda on the Plaza. This is a hotel located in New Mexico that has been host to plenty of tragedies. Travel and Leisure says this beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico hotel has an incredibly rich history. Since 1609, a number of inns have been located on this very site, but a handful of events may be the cause of continued hauntings. According to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the ghosts of a judge shot in the lobby, a businessman who gambled everything away at the hotel before jumping down a well, and a bride killed on her wedding night are just a few of the spirits that you may come across during your stay here. That's 3 spirits too many for me, guys. Whenever situations like this arise, I start to question things. What I mean is that, isn't this a little bit odd that 3 totally separate, completely different tragic events all took place right here at different times? Sure, it could be a coincidence, but it seems like a rather sad one if you ask me. Maybe there was always something about this space that was just a little off. Maybe people who come here just get hit with horrible luck. Maybe this hotel was built on some sort of ancient ground that it shouldn't have been built on, and this is the horrible reaction. I obviously can't say for sure, but something's fishy about this hotel, and I wouldn't recommend checking it out if I was you.
In at number 5 we have James Bay Inn in Victoria, British Columbia. The James Bay Inn opened in 1911 and is the 3rd oldest hotel in Victoria. The hotel has continued to operate, only closing briefly during the war. The hotel was built so that every room has a view outside and access to fresh air. This was the most important thing to the architects. The hotel bought enough land that there is nothing blocking guests' view. In 1942 the hotel was purchased by the Mother Cecilia's religious order. From then until 1945 the hotel was run as St. Mary's Priory. During this time the building had its most famous visitor, the Canadian painter Emily Carr. The Canadian painter Emily Carr was a patient at the Priory during her illness. It was here that she spent her final days and finally succumbed to her illness. Many believe that her spirit did not pass on. It could have been that she has unfinished business, a painting she had yet to finish. In the final days before she died, she was made aware she was to be awarded an achievement for her life's work, an award she did not live to see. The room that was used for the sick in 1945 has since been refurbished a number of times. It is now a men's room leading off from the pub. It is believed that her spirit is unhappy that where she had her final moments has been turned into a restroom. There are reports that she likes to play around with the ghosts. She will call the phones in the rooms at night. When answered, no one is there. She has also been seen to appear at the end of the beds watching people sleep at night. She was also once seen in a mirror of the washroom. The scared guest told others, but no one else saw her on investigation. In at number 4 we have Fairmont Royal York in Toronto. Opened in 1929 by Canadian Pacific Hotels, the Fairmont Royal York in Toronto has been a member of Historic Hotels Worldwide since 2017. When it first opened, the hotel was the tallest structure in the entire British Empire. Within a year, the demand for the hotel grew so much the hotel already had its first renovations to add more rooms. Like most other hotels around that time, the hotel was designed as a chateau and Art Deco style architecture. This hotel has also hosted royal family members members King George IV and Queen Elizabeth during their royal visit to Canada. The hotel is believed to have at least 4 ghosts who like to walk the halls of the historic hotel. An author named John Robert Colombo wrote the book Mysteries of Ontario. In the book, he mentioned a ghost that he came across during his stay at the Fairmont Hotel. According to the book, he saw an apparition of a man. He said he was a grey-haired man in a maroon jacket. He saw the man in the hallway of the 8th floor. Others have also reported seeing the man in different areas of the hotel. There is another story about a young woman who used to work at the hotel. The former employee once went missing during her shift. When she was finally found, it was too late. The woman had taken her life and was hanging from the stairwell railing above the 19th floor. The reason why she did this was never discovered. Since then, staff have heard strange scrapings and screams coming from that area of the hotel. If anyone dares to investigate the noises, they stop. Guests have also come into contact with her ghost on the 8th floor, claiming they felt the presence of someone, like they were being followed. As mentioned before, there are believed to be more ghosts in the hotel. The hotel is so grand in size that hauntings have occurred randomly over many floors. One electrician claimed he often feels cold spots when working on the hotel with no reason as to why. In at number 3 we have the Fairmont Chateau Laurier in Ottawa. The Fairmont Chateau was originally commissioned to be built in the early 1900s by Charles Melville Hayes. Charles was the president of the Grand Trunk Railway. He began his career with the company when he was just 17 as a clerk. He soon worked his way up the ranks within the company. It was his idea to build a transcontinental railroad within Canada from Moncton to British Columbia. He was an ambitious man but often promised more than he could actually achieve. This often led him to upsetting people and causing repercussions for his company. He was even called heartless, cruel and tyrannical by one member of the parliament. His hotel was due to open in 1912 after he returned to Canada after a short trip to London to sort out some of his business problems. The gala opening for his hotel was planned for April 25th. That's my sister's birthday. Just so you all know. He bought a ticket to travel back on the 10th of April after hearing his daughter back home was struggling with her pregnancy. He was due to arrive in New York on April 17th in order to make the gala. Unfortunately, Charles, along with his wife and staff, were on board the RMS Titanic. Charles is said to have helped the woman in his family safely get to the boats, but he himself would not make the trip. He was brought back to Canada to be laid to rest. His hotel did open after a amount of time to mourn his passing. Although he was not there when the hotel opened, it is rumored his spirit still remains within the walls. Likely his spirit felt it had some unfinished business, having died so suddenly and tragically. One visitor from 2008 stated that the hotel was definitely haunted. She claimed her floor in particular was haunted and she felt incredibly scared during her visit. Taps would turn themselves on mysteriously, as well as footsteps in the hallway. She did also state it would not stop her from visiting again though. Maybe the beautiful castle is worth a scare. In at number 2 we have the Banff Springs Hotel in Alberta. The Fairmont Banff Springs, formerly known as the Banff Springs Hotel, is a historic hotel in Banff, Alberta. William Cornelius Van Horn, another founder of the railroad, had the idea to build a hotel on the land. When construction began of the railroad in this area, they stumbled across several mineral springs. Seeing the great opportunity, William commissioned a grand hotel be built at the location. Construction started and they relied heavily on Chateau-esque style architecture for inspiration. After 2 years of construction, the Banff Springs Hotel opened its doors in 1886. Quickly became known as one of the top 3 mountain resorts in North America. Its great reputation stands to this day. It has hosted historical figures such as King George VI and his wife Queen Elizabeth. The hotel is now open for over 130 years. A lot of guests have visited in that time and it is believed that not all of them may have left. One story that has always been told between guests is one of the ghost bride. The story goes that her and her fiancé had booked in for a lavish wedding at the hotel. They had their entire family booked into the hotel and it was looking to be a beautiful celebration of their love. On the morning of their wedding, she got into her dress and prepared herself for the big day. Unknowing to her, what came next was tragic. She wanted to make an entrance into the wedding and decided to descend down one of the marble staircases. She slipped on her dress and frantically reached for something to stop her. She fell a great height to the bottom of the stairs, in front of all the guests and her fiancé. They watched in horror, unable to do anything. They rushed to her aid, but it was too late. She was already gone. The wedding party had to leave the hotel in an attempt to move on from the tragedy, but the bride could not. Her soul was trapped inside of the hotel. It is said she now spends her days walking down the same staircase, hoping to reach the bottom and greet her loved ones, but she never will. This is a common sighting for guests of the hotel. You can feel a chill run down you if you walk those steps today. Some guests have even heard crying echoes across the marble floors, unable to see what might be causing it. Maybe one day she will find peace in the afterlife, but right now she continues to haunt the halls of the hotel. And finally, in at number 1 we have the Fort Garry Hotel in Winnipeg. The Fort Garry Hotel is located in downtown Winnipeg. It opened for the first time in December 11, 1913, and once again has links to the railway. It's one of many hotels owned by Canada's Grand Railway Hotel. It has been designated as a National Historic Site of Canada due to its long history. Any hotel that has been open as long as this one is bound to have some ghosts sticking around. The most haunted room in the hotel seems to be room 202. Many years ago, a woman and her husband checked into the hotel for their visit to Winnipeg. It is said that the husband had left to run an errand, leaving his wife at the hotel for a short time. When he didn't return for hours, the wife became worried. She then got a call from the police that he had been involved in a car accident. He did not survive the crash. Stricken with grief, the woman spent many days in the room locked away. She then decided to take her own life as she could not go on without her husband. Since then, the room is said to hold her angry spirit. Both staff and guests have made similar reports of seeing blood dripping from the walls. One woman claimed that during her stay in the room she was awoken twice by the feeling of someone getting into bed with her. The ghost is not only confined to the room. Others have seen her in the hotel lounge, sat in a corner dressed in all black, crying over her lost love. She's not the only ghost at the Fort Garry Hotel though, simply the only one who can be identified. There are also reports of a man. He has been seen at the foot of guest's bed while they sleep. When they awake to confront the intruder, he disappears. One employee once entered the dining hall and saw a man sat at one of the tables. He called to the man that he would have to leave. He went to get help, but when he returned, the man was gone. Coming in at number 5, we have Clown Motel in Nevada. In the 5th spot is the motel that's horrifying for so many reasons, hauntings aside. If you're afraid of clowns, like most people, I highly suggest you steer clear from this place. Located in Nevada, the Clown Motel is home to over 600 creepy clowns. To make matters worse, the motel's neighbor is, of course, a cemetery. Why not? It may look like it's straight out of a horror film, but don't worry, the Clown Motel only displays happy looking clowns, as if that's any better. Aside from the clowns, the motel has wood paneling on the walls reminiscent of the 1970s and bedrooms with outdated bedding. For some reason, that makes it creepier. Next door is the Old Tonopah Cemetery, where the hotel's haunting is said to come from. Over 300 people were laid to rest there, some dying from suicide, murder, the Belmont mine fire, and a plague that cursed the area in 1902. The cause of it all is still unknown. Ghost adventurers visited the location in 2017 and caused a boom in popularity. The property was recently sold and the new owners are carrying on with the theme, constantly adding new clowns to the motel's collection. Coming in at number 4, we have Langham Hotel, London. This historic hotel opened its doors in 1865, and in came many famous patrons over the years like Mark Twain, Oscar Wilde, and Winston Churchill. It's also said to be incredibly haunted, and given the age, it makes sense. A number of ghosts are known to frequent the property, one being a German prince. Story goes that the man plunged to his death by jumping out of a window before the start of World War I. He can be seen in his military uniform lingering around the 4th floor window. There's said to be a doctor who murdered his wife before killing himself while on their honeymoon. Legend also says that the Emperor Napoleon III spent his last days at the Langham Hotel and can now be spotted roaming the halls. Like most haunted hotels, there's always one room that's plagued the most by paranormal activity. At the Langham Hotel, that room is 333. Can we just talk about the fact that 333 times 2 is 666? Coincidence? I think that's a reach. The most common spectre spotting happens in the room by a man in Victorian era clothes. Also, Cher stayed at that hotel once, I remember, because I saw the paparazzi shots on the Daily Mail website. Coming in at number 3, we have Queen Mary, Long Beach. The RMS Queen Mary is a British ocean liner turned hotel that's known for its many spirits aboard and below deck. Making its maiden voyage in 1936, she eventually served as a transport ship for Allied troops in World War II. Today, this floating haunted hotel calls SoCal home, aka Southern California, because I didn't know we were doing the lingo up in here. SoCal. While converted as a troop carrier during the war, the ship collided with her escort, slicing the HMS Caracal in half. Around 300 people drowned as a result. Throughout the years, staff and guests have reported seeing many different apparitions and have experienced unexplained events. Screams and wails can be heard coming from the boiler room, where a young sailor was said to have been severed in half by a door. There have also been reports of a little girl who likes to play games with the living by the swimming pool. The saloon on the Queen Mary is a hotspot for Lady in White sightings, who is said to be a first-class passenger. At least she haunts in style, often being spotted dancing in a long ball gown. Perhaps Perhaps the most haunted spot in the hotel is located on the infamous B deck, specifically suite B340. They actually stopped offering the suite because they received an abundance of complaints about paranormal activity. Of course, this drew mass attention to the room, so they now offer a ghost package for those brave enough to spend the night in the most haunted suite on the ship. With its intriguing and checkered past, it's no surprise that the Queen Mary was once labelled by Time magazine as one of the top 10 most haunted places on Earth. In at number 2 we have the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. The Stanley Hotel is perhaps the most infamous haunted hotel in the world, and for a good reason. It's said to be so haunted that author Stephen King based his popular novel The Shining on the colonial revival style hotel, which was later adapted into the hit film starring Jack Nicholson. Should you decide to spend a night at the Stanley Hotel, you'll be spending it among a plethora of spirits that are said to haunt the grounds, and not all of them are human. But let's look back to the hotel's haunted history. It was built by inventor Freeland Oscar Stanley, who moved to Colorado hoping to relieve his tuberculosis symptoms in 1903. One season later, he was a new man, no longer weak and frail. He was so overjoyed that he decided to build a sophisticated hotel, and in 1908, the Stanley Hotel opened its doors. Stanley lived until the ripe age of 91, but his spirit is said to still roam the halls of the place he loved. His wife, Flora, also has been spotted in the hotel and is known to play the piano. All ghosts play the piano, apparently. Another spirit is that of a housekeeper named Elizabeth Wilson. She was seriously injured on the property in an explosion, but thankfully survived. Her spirit is said to reside in room 217, which happens to be the same room that Stephen King stayed in. The author apparently had a nightmare of his young son being chased around the hotel. On the 4th floor, guests and staff have reported hearing children laughing and playing. There's also a spirit of a little boy named Billy who is known to play with the hair of guests. So the next type of ghost isn't actually that scary, more cute if anything. On the grounds there's a small pet cemetery. People have reported seeing apparitions of a cat and dog roaming around. The Stanley Hotel also has an underground cave system below with a high concentration of minerals that are said to attract spirits. And finally, in at number 1 we have the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Located in the dirty underbelly of LA, the Cecil Hotel is not for the faint of heart. It has housed famous serial killers, a bizarre mystery, and tons of death, but let's start at the beginning. In its glory, the Cecil was the definition of opulence, with a grand marble lobby, stained glass windows, and beautiful statues. But that quickly fell through when it was hit hard by the Great Depression. In 1931, the Cecil had its first of many suicides. The once elegant hotel and the area around it slowly became what we know today as Skid Row. After a string of more suicides, the hotel became a place for people to die. Perhaps the most grim death was when a woman gave birth in the hotel, and in a panic, she threw herself out the window. Let's say she did that. I like changing history so that I can keep it in. Elizabeth Short, famously known as the Black Dahlia, was also said to have had a drink in the hotel's lobby days before her gruesome murder. Even more famous, or should I say infamous, people have frequented the Cecil Hotel. In the 1980s, Richard Ramirez, or the Night Stalker, was terrorizing the West Coast, murdering at least 38 people in less than a year. The serial killer called the Cecil home and based his operations out of the hotel. He allegedly even dumped bloody clothes and evidence in the dumpsters behind it. Austrian serial killer Jack Unterweger also resided at the Cecil in the 1990s. After serving time in prison for a murder conviction back in his home country, he checked into the Cecil while working as a journalist. He murdered 3 sex workers and even reported on his crimes until he was caught. The Cecil Hotel found itself at the center of a mystery in 2013 that took the world by storm. The disappearance of Elisa Lam made headlines. The 21-year-old tourist's body was found floating in the hotel's water tank. Her death was ruled accidental and attributed to mental illness, but there are very strange elements to the story that still leave doubt in people's minds. There's security camera footage that shows Elisa in the elevator acting rather strange. She seems to be hiding by pressing her body up against the wall, occasionally peeking out and acting as if someone is in there. Whether you believe her death was accidental, homicide, or paranormal, it's still an incredibly bizarre and haunting story. Although the Cecil Hotel has since been rebranded and has undergone a facelift, there are too many deaths and sinister stories attached to the hotel for it to not be haunted.
Number 5. The Banff Springs Hotel. First opening in 1888, nestled in Canada's Rocky Mountains, the Banff Springs Hotel has played host to a variety of guests over the years, not all of them mortal beings. The Banff Springs Hotel is known for its variety of ghosts, who allegedly haunt its halls, the most benign of which is Sam the Bellman. Sam McCauley was an old man from Scotland who came to Canada and became the head bellman at the Banff Springs. Sam loved his job and often often joked that he would work at the hotel forever, even refusing to retire until his death in 1975. In the years since, several guests have reported a bellman in an antiquated uniform, matching Sam's description, wandering the halls, asking about their stay, and even helping guests who are locked out of their rooms. Less wholesome is the famous Phantom Bride, who according to legend was married at the hotel in the early 30s. Apparently, before the wedding reception, the bride was making her way up the large marble staircase leading to the Cascade Ballroom to join her husband who was waiting at the top. She tripped on her own dress and fell down the stairs, making her husband a widower in the process. There have been tales of the bride haunting the hotel ever since, with strange crying noises being heard in the empty bridal suite and reports of a phantom bride dancing alone in the ballroom or making her way up the fatal staircase. The most disturbing of the hauntings is the events that took place in room 873. According to legend, a man was staying with his wife and daughter in the room when he went mad and ended the lives of all involved. In the years since, the ghosts of the child and her mother have apparently remained in the room, with guests being awoken by violent screams and finding bloody handprints on the mirror that the maids could not manage to wash off. The reports got so numerous and disturbing that the hotel management sealed off the room, making it unavailable for guests. However, despite the numerous supernatural specters you may encounter, the hotel's beautiful architecture and services, as well as the scenic mountain views and the amazing skiing available in Banff, will make you never want to leave. Number 4. The Omni Mount Washington Hotel. Located in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, the Mount Washington Hotel was built in 1902 by Joseph Stickney. Sadly, soon after the hotel was built, Joseph passed away, being survived by his wife, Carolyn. Carolyn eventually remarried to a French prince, but the newly minted princess continued to spend her summers at the luxurious hotel, always staying in her personal suite, room 314. In the years since Princess Carolyn's death, there have been several reported instances from guests and staff alike about seeing the princess sitting at the foot of the bed. The following story from one of the former employees is particularly chilling. In 1997, I was working as a housekeeper and had to clean room number 314, the princess's room. I went to service the room that newlyweds were staying in, and I knocked on the door and there was no answer. I opened the door, went in, and there was a little girl sleeping on the bed. Immediately, I went to the hallway to see my inspector and told her I couldn't clean the room because a little girl was sleeping. She said that was odd because the guests were newlyweds and nobody else was registered. She asked me to leave a note that I was coming back in an hour to service the room. I went back in the room to leave the note by the table. I walked in the room quietly to not wake the little girl up. When I looked at the bed, instead of a little girl, there was a woman staring right at me with the most scary smile on her face. She had black hair and was wearing a white dress. I got chills down my spine and I just stood there, frozen. She sat on the bed and kept staring at me. I ran out of the room and told my friend, who was also a housekeeper. We both went back in the room and there was no one there. I still have a hard time remembering that incident, and I get chills every time I speak about it. I have many friends that have worked there, and I heard a lot of scary things that happened. Oh, the day before this happened, my friend and I took pictures of ourselves on the princess's bed. Everybody tells me that I made her upset by doing that. There have also been tales of other areas of the hotel playing host to paranormal activity, such as this story of the ballroom. As I walked into the ballroom late one evening on a night where there was no performers, I heard the faint sounds of an orchestra playing. I thought a rehearsal was going on, and I went to see who it was. There was no one there. No one. As I walked away from the side of the stage, the lights suddenly went out, and the music got louder. It was surreal and very, very scary. I ran to the light switch and saw that it had been turned off. I turned it back on, and the lights went on for a second, and then the switch turned down on its own. The entire time, the music kept playing. I ran out and found security and told them what happened. They went in to investigate and found nothing. No music and no problem with the lights. Despite the various ghosts, the Mount Washington Resort provides guests with stunning views of the mountains and the famously beautiful foliage of the White Mountain National Forest. This combined with the amazing ski opportunities, the on-site golf course, and the fact that it has played host to several famous guests, including 3 US presidents and Thomas Edison, will make your trip a memorable vacation location that you'll never want to leave. Number 3. The Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel was opened in 1909 by the American inventor and entrepreneur Freeland Oscar Stanley. In the years since its opening, it has developed the reputation as being one of the world's most famous and influential haunted hotels, having been described as the Disneyland for ghosts. All throughout the hotel, paranormal activity is reported, with vacuums being turned off or having their plugs torn out of the walls at any given moment. But there are 3 consistent sites of ghost activity on the premises that we will explore. The 4th floor of the hotel was originally a cavernous attic, before eventually being converted into the living quarters for the female employees, their children, and nannies. In the years since, it has been converted into guest rooms, but the spirits of the past are still known to stick around. Guests have reported seeing their closet doors opening and closing on their own, and hearing the sounds of children running around and giggling while they play. In room 428, guests have reported seeing the ghost of a friendly cowboy appearing at the corner of the bed, who is believed to be the spirit of Rocky Mountain Jim Nugent, a guide from the late 1800s who was known for only having one eye after being attacked by a bear. Another haunted location is the concert hall, which was built by Stanley as a gift for his wife Flora, who can often be heard playing her piano late into the night. Another spirit who can be found in the hall is a former employee named Paul, who used to enforce the 11 p.m. curfew and who now nudges guests and workers who are in the hall late at night and will sometimes flicker the lights and tell them to get out. Most infamous is room 217, which is apparently haunted by the ghost of a housekeeper named Elizabeth Wilson. She apparently flickers the lights, moves objects, and will even unpack the guest's luggage. She is, however, somewhat old-fashioned and will literally try and drive a wedge between unwed couples who share the bed, with several couples describing a cold force coming between them in the night and the man's bags being packed and left by the door in the morning. Although this has never been confirmed, when the movie Dumb and Dumber was filmed in the area, Jim Carrey stayed in room 217 and was so scared by something in the room that he ran out of the room half naked and screaming in the middle of the night. The hotel was on the verge of being closed down until an author and his family stayed at the Stanley in 1974, the day before it closed for the season. They were the only guests, and the large, empty, ornate hotel left them feeling extremely uneasy. When the author and his wife stayed in room 217 that night, he had a vivid nightmare about his son being attacked in the hallways, and when Stephen King awoke, he had the idea for his best-selling novel, The Shining. In the years since the novel's publication and the release of the film adaptation by Stanley Kubrick, the Stanley Hotel has embraced its spooky reputation, offering ghost tours, having a television channel that plays the film on a loop, available for guests, and even constructing an elaborate hedge maze in order to make the hotel more like the fictional Overlook Hotel it inspired. The Stanley Hotel is a must-visit site for paranormal and horror fans that they'll never want to leave. And if they get lost in the hedge maze, they never will. Number 2. Ruthin Castle. The Ruthin Castle in North Wales was built in the early 1200s by Edward I to replace the wooden fortress that stood in its place before, as a gift to the king's loyal allies, eventually ending up in the hands of Reginald de Grey as a reward for helping Edward assemble the finest army in the world. The modern castle was built within the original castle's ruins in 1826, before being sold to be used as a hospital in 1923 and eventually being converted into a hotel in the 1960s. Some of the most famous figures that have stayed in the castle over the course of its long and storied history include King Henry VII and his daughter Mary, making this a location that you can stay in that once housed the original and authentic Bloody Mary. Although, as always, summoning her in a darkened room is not recommended. One of the most haunted rooms in the hotel is room 222, where several guests have reported sudden and extreme drops in temperature, as well as hearing slamming doors and tapping sounds all around the room. Another consistent tale is the little girl who is often seen at night knocking on guests' doors and running through the halls and on the roof while giggling. Also commonly cited is a soldier, supposedly one who died defending the castle while serving in King Edward's army, who can be seen wandering the castle grounds dressed in full medieval armor. However, the most infamous apparition is the ghost of Reginald de Grey's wife, Lady Grey. She apparently caught her husband having an affair and in a jealous rage dispatched the mistress with an axe. She was sentenced to death, and her body was not allowed to be buried on consecrated grounds and was instead buried outside the castle walls. Perhaps due to not being able to receive a proper burial, many guests and employees have reported seeing Lady Grey wandering the castle grounds, as well as the rooms on the upper floor and in the banquet hall, still carrying her axe. Despite its creepy history, this hotel is known for treating its guests like royalty, providing them with a variety of different rooms at different price points and having a world-class spa, as well as the ability to participate in a medieval banquet and tours of the grounds, the dungeons, the drowning pool, and the whipping pit, making this one castle you won't mind being laid siege in. Number 1. The Emily Morgan Hotel. Located in the American city of San Antonio, Texas, this Gothic-style building, built in 1924, was originally a medical center with its own hospital, morgue, crematorium, and psych ward. It operated in this capacity until it closed in 1976 and was eventually converted and reopened as a hotel in 1984. Although no longer a hospital, some guests have reported hearing hospital carts being wheeled up and down the halls and smelling the distinct smell of antiseptic on the 14th floor. On the 7th floor, where the psych ward operated, there are reports of a ghost bride who is known to wander the halls and wake guests with terrifying screams. In the basement, which used to house the crematorium, employees report the smell of burning flesh and the apparition of glowing floating orbs, as well as disembodied voices crying out in pain. If this isn't ghostly enough, you can look out the window and see another notoriously haunted building, as the Alamo is located directly across the street. With all the local history, you will never want to leave once you receive some of that Texas hospitality. Staying the night in a haunted hotel sounds like a stressful experience, but it still sounds preferable to staying at the Econo Lodge Motel.